Chris asked me to do Colossians 22 to 25 in chapter 3. It's always good to have the right chapter and the right verse. So I'll give you guys a second to turn there. So I ask you while you're turning there, I'm going to ask a couple of rhetorical questions. You ever had a dead-end job? I know I have. Does your job make you, or did it make you, do all the little dirty works, all the little dirty jobs that nobody else wanted to do? Were you ever on call for 24/7? Basically, anytime your boss wanted to call you, 2 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, anytime he wanted to call, he'd call you. When you worked there, did you have no hope of advancement? Just basically, that is your job, and you're going to do that the rest of your life. And the last question, were there plenty of people to replace you in a second? So when this was written, probably about half or more, there's different commentaries on how many Roman slaves there were in the Roman Empire. Some said close to half, some said more than half, so I'm just gonna meet in the middle. So basically, what I just described was the slave back then. So I'm gonna read 22 to 25, and hopefully we'll have time to do chapter 4, verse 1, because he wanted me to stop there. So if I'm done in 5 minutes, Chris wanted me to stop right at 4:1. So. Bondservants, obey all things your master according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in sincerity of your heart, fearing God, and whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord, not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. But he who does wrong will repay for what he has done, and there is no partiality. Now, please jump in anytime you guys want. So when I looked at it, I said, "You want me to do just 4 verses or 5 verses?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." So I was thinking, man, we're gonna be done real quick. But then I basically did it a couple hours ago. I started this class, and I just kept finding more things and more things and more things. And so feel free to jump in anytime you want. Basically, Paul redefines occupational status. Imagine being a Roman slave and reading this for the first time. So you're a Roman, probably couldn't read, so let me rephrase that. Imagine being a Roman slave, not having any power, basically somebody telling you what to do, when to do it, and you had to do it or you died. But imagine hearing that for the very first time. How would you feel? No, I'm sorry, that wasn't a rhetorical. Anyone?
Empowered a little bit, because they've just been crushed until that point.
Yeah, empowered a lot. I mean, I've literally had some jobs like that when I was 16, 17, you're a busboy, and you're basically ordered by the general manager, the assistant general manager, the manager, the busboy, the server, bartender, everybody that worked there that was above you. The only person that couldn't tell you what to do was the dishwasher. And he'd try anyway, and I started laughing at him. I said, "You can't tell me what to do," as I'm getting yelled at by 20 other people. You're a slave, you have 0 rights. But with that hearing for me, I'm trying to imagine the first time somebody heard that was a slave. Even bondservants still were slaves. But imagine hearing that for the first time. How would your attitude be? Would your attitude change?
Well, hopefully, but it might be difficult.
I had a football coach in college, and I went to Lubbock, so it was a small school, so I signed up for a football team. And I remember it went from like 80 degrees to about negative 20 degrees in Lubbock, Texas within a week. And I'm thinking that shoulder pads and all the things, and I'm like, it's kind of hot. And then next thing I know, it's so cold. And I remember doing push-ups, and we jumped down to do push-ups, and that first time I put my hand on frosted grass in my whole life, because I'm literally born across the street from an ocean, and on the equator, and moved to California, lived all my life on the beach, and now I'm experiencing living in cold and wind, and I'm going there, and I remember that coach would scream at us, up, down, and then he had so many phrases, and one of his phrases that I heard was, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. And I hated that phrase because I'm doing push-ups. I hated doing push-ups in the snow, basically, with all these pads on. But I understood what he meant. I think after the football season, after I got my degree, I finally understood. It's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude. So no matter where we're at, no matter what we're doing, and there's so many phrases, Galatians 5:28, 29, there's neither slave or free, and Colossians says it right here, and then Romans says it. It talks about this in so many different books, and he's trying to tell us this for a reason. If it's written down in more than 5 places, it's probably pretty important. There's probably issues going on. Okay, because I'm brown, Mick is Caucasian. Still haven't figured out what Gary is. Okay, so we're different. What? Furry. Okay. But the 3 that I just mentioned, the 3 of us are, if we stand in the corner and people walk by, oh, how do you guys know each other? And I say, that's my brother. That's my brother. That's my sister. That's my sister. Because that's the attitude I have. It's neither male or female. It's neither free or slave. We're not separated anymore. We're together. We're family. But he's saying this to the slaves. As Christians, we need to show the right attitude towards our employers, our supervisors, people in charge of our employment. Why? Why do we need to do that? I love using restaurant analogies because in restaurants, you could be the general manager, which I have been, but you still have 10 bosses above you. And then everybody in the restaurant is below you because you're in charge. So even though nobody in the restaurant as a general manager had the ability to tell me what to do, I would still work as best as I could. Why? Especially if your salary, you get paid the same Mick.
A couple of reasons. One is you build a spirit of teamwork, and everyone ends up doing a better job, and everyone ends up enjoying their work more, and the public notices.
Those are all correct answers, Mick. Not the answers I'm looking for, but those are all correct answers. Why, if I tell everybody in my restaurant, hey, don't swear, hey, let's go out and drink afterwards. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't swear. I already said that. Are you a Christian? Yeah.
The reason to do it is because that's what God and Christ wants us to do.
That's the best answer.
Yeah.
That's pretty, yeah, that's a good answer for a lot of different questions. But what are we doing when we act a certain way? If I'm a busboy and I'm in the bus station just drinking a soda and there's tables everywhere, if I'm a gardener and everybody's raking leaves and I'm sitting in the truck listening to the radio, what does that tell people? If I tell everybody I'm a Christian and act that way, what am I doing?
Pretty confusing, right? Because they're wondering, oh, because this guy's lazy, doesn't care about doing a good job. Well, why is he doing that?
What?
Not being respectful.
Not being a Christian. I personally, even though it doesn't say that, I personally, if somebody knows I'm a Christian and and hey, let's go out and get hammered tonight, man. It was a rough week. you know, but I'm telling everybody I'm a Christian, that's not telling everybody I'm a Christian. If I tell people I'm a Christian and then I'm the laziest goofball employee that company's ever seen, that's telling people I'm not a Christian. Anybody want to disagree with me on that or elaborate on that? You can. Why are you putting it? Any questions? 22, bondservants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with your eye service as man pleasers, but in sincerity of your heart, fearing God. It's kind of cool that this is all happening right here because Paul had a slave at the time that ran away, and he basically was next to him. What was his name? What? Onesimus? Right?
Onesimus.
Yeah, I can't never say that. But Paul basically talked to him, hey, you want to be a Christian, you have to do the right thing. I know you're home free, but you need to go back to your masters. And he's saying that bondservants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as man pleasers, but in sincerity of your heart, fearing God. What does that mean?
He's saying you're working for the Lord. Yeah, so in everything that you do, don't be thinking about just pleasing man, but think about pleasing God. And because that's ultimately who you're working for.
Yeah, absolutely. Titus 2, 9 and 10. Titus 2, 9 and 10 says, exhort bondservants be obedient to their own masters, to be willing, pleasing in all things, not answering back, not pilfering, but showing all good fidelity, that they may adorn the doctrine of God, our Savior in all things. So what's in that verse, what's the difference between a lawyer and a gardener, a doctor and a teacher, housewife, and fill in the blank?
Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, I've seen Alex in action. He put a needle about this big in my back one time. I still haven't forgiven him for that, but that's my own issues. But the whole time he was there, he acted like a Christian. The whole time I tried to, at Claim Jumper, I got to train people. And when I was going to Camelback, there was probably, I don't know, about 300 people attended there. And I'm working at Claim Jumper restaurants, and my boss says, hey, there's a lady who's going to start next week. You're going to be training her. Great. So in Claim Jumper, they followed you everywhere. When you took a lunch break, they took a lunch break. They can eat with you or just sit anywhere they want. If I'm in the back helping the kitchen, she'd be right next to me, watching what I was doing. She'd be listening to me talk to tables. Everything I did, she was my chef. For a week, she went off and sat by herself, and then she came, and that was fine. Didn't have a problem with that. A week goes by, and she comes in. She goes, "Can I sit with you?" I go, "Absolutely." So how long you said you just moved here? Yeah. How long you been living here? She goes, well, we lived here for a month before I got the job. Excuse me. And I said, oh, so you have a family? Yep, 2 kids. Great. And she said her name, showed me pictures, real pictures. You guys Google that. Paper. And then I said, what do you like to do? And she goes, oh, we just got connected with this really great church. I said, oh, and so for me, that's an opportunity, right? I said, what's the name of the church? She goes, it's kind of a funny name, but it's because it's where the mountain is. And I go, what's the name? She goes, Camelback Church of Christ. And normally I would have done what Linda did. I would have started laughing. For a second, maybe longer, maybe 30 seconds, I was going, did I say or do anything that wasn't appropriate? Did I yell or snap at somebody that maybe, because I thought that way. I don't know if it was 30 or 10 seconds, but I thought that first. And I said to myself, I go, you should not be thinking that way. If you're a Christian, you're a Christian all the time. And if you're employed by somebody, you should be the best employee there. if you're a slave to them, and basically to me, I felt like a slave because I had to get up at 7 in the morning or 6 in the morning, go to work, and then the next day I'd have to be at work at 4 till 3 in the morning. So I was like, oh. But that was the first thing I thought of. And then I said, you go where? She goes, Calvary Church of Christ. We just started going there about 3 weeks ago. And I go, huh, you ever see me do the Lord's Supper or say a prayer? She's like, what? I go, that's where I go. My wife and I go there. But funny how the human brain, and like, so I'm being transparent. The first thing I thought of is, how did I act in front of her? Which should be the case. So I'm still working on that. But basically, we shouldn't have any difference. So in that verse right there, we're going to just, I know Colossians, but the first part, exhort bondservants to be obedient to their masters. So that's a description. I'm going to say what the description is. I want you to say what the issue is, and then what application we can pull from that. Hopefully that made sense. So the description is be obedient to your masters. What's the issue?
They were not being obedient.
They were not being obedient. You ever see shampoo bottles? Not shampoo bottle, a hairspray, not hair dryer. You ever see the box and read the warning? Do not use this in the shower. There's a reason that warning's there, because somebody plugged it in and said, while I'm showering, I'm going to dry my hair. That's why that's there. Normally, when he writes something and says, don't do this, probably somebody did that. So he's writing down the description, obedient to your masters. The issue is you're not being obedient. You're not recognizing authority. So as Christians, what would be the application? Jeff,
Anybody that has authority.
What?
Anybody that has authority.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If somebody has authority over you, yes, sir. No, ma'am. Got it. I'll be over it. I volunteer. Claim Jumper had 18 managers. 3 of them were kitchen managers. And you start as assistant restaurant manager. You go to restaurant manager, senior manager, AGM, senior AGM, GM. So when I started there, everybody was above me. And I'd start joking around with some of them. I go, keep telling me what to do now, because in about 2 months I'm going to be over you. And I'd volunteer for stuff, and I would go up to them, let me do your job. Teach me what you just did. Guess who got promoted? I wasn't smarter, I wasn't faster. You know, one guy says, oh, I'm such a better cook than you. I can run circles around you on the floor. And I go, and they pay me more. Because I wanted to get promoted, one, and that'd be 2 actually. One was I was a Christian that was dumb enough to say, ooh, did I say anything inappropriate? So the second one says in that verse, says, well-pleasing in all things. What's the issue?
You had servants that were not acting very nice, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
You know, disagreeable in some way or another, probably with the masters and with others.
If I had a slave, which actually would be kind of cool right now. But anyway, if I had a slave and I said, hey, clean my Jeep, and I go out there and it's still dirty, like 80% of it's still dirty, the front end is nice and shiny, is he doing an excellent job? Is he well-pleasing in all things to me as a slave owner? No. No. And so everything I'm saying right now is put yourself as the slave. And I know Western mentality is really hard to do that because I'm free. Well, I'll show you a few verses I probably should have looked up. It talks about you're either a slave to sin or a slave to Jesus. Going back, it says not answering back. So what would the conflict be, or the issue? Pretty self-explanatory. Not answering back, what is he talking about?
Back talking back.
Yeah. Yep. So me, so those of you that knew me 15 years ago, I had 2 dogs. The first dog was Bandit, the second dog was Charlie. Bandit, come here. Shoo! What do you want? What do you want? I'm here to please you. I'm here to please you. Good boy, or good girl. Charlie, come here. Give me a second. I'm laying down right here. I just got comfy. Give me a few minutes. I'll get back to you. I'm like, come here. Did you just growl at me? Kick this dog out of my house. One wanted to do so well, wanted to please so much, and the other one was like, got my chew toy right here, I'm good. I don't want to play fetch. Whatever you want to do with me, it'll wait. That's a mentality that they had. Now, it's okay if you're a slave to have that mentality. If you want to get smacked around or whipped or killed. But if you're a slave and you're a Christian, and again, that's why he wrote that. Not pilfering. What does that mean? What's the issue? Stealing. Stealing. I walked into the men's restroom at Claim Jumper one time to make sure everything was clean, and there was a blue bag in there. And I opened it up. Didn't count it, but I was guessing about 10 grand. I don't know why somebody had 10 grand, and I don't know why they went to the restroom, and I don't know why they left it there. And I was walking out with it, and somebody called and said, hey, the hostess answered, they want to speak to a manager. I had it in my hand. Hello? Thank you for holding. This is Bill. Do you have a blue bag? It's in the men's restroom. You guys know me by now. I wanted to say so many things. No, somebody just walked out with it. They said it was theirs. That was the first thing that popped in my head. The guy was almost crying. I said, sir, I have it right here. And he goes, oh, I'm on the freeway. I'm turning around right now. How can you forget that much money? But you have to be honest. You have to be honest. I know these are like sayings that we shouldn't have to repeat. But that was 10 grand. To me, sometimes, again, I'm being transparent. To me, sometimes giving back 10 grand that belonged to somebody is a lot easier than saying, oh, that little white lie. But I'm a Christian. Bill, did you do that report? No, sir. Sorry. I'll get it tonight. Would have been easy because he's walking out the door. Bill, did you do that report? Yeah, got it. That would have been really easy. But we have to be honest. Last one, show all good fidelity. What does that mean? What's the issue before with? What was the issue?
Not being loyal.
Fidelity means, correct me if I'm wrong, fidelity means making something look better, correct? Is that one way of looking at it? Go ahead. Anybody have something different? Somebody will look it up real quick. Making something look better. So one of the reasons I got promoted at restaurants is I told my boss, let me do that. And I said, my job is to make you look good so you get promoted so I can have your spot. That was my mentality. As a slave to Jesus, and this is before I became a youth minister, this is before, and when I went back into restaurants and now I'm a associate minister again, before that mentality, I had the mentality of, I want to make Duke better. I want to train Caleb to come up here and lead singing. I've told you before, people have come up to me and said, man, you're a great director. I said, absolutely. I'm a phenomenal director. because I get really good people and then I get out of the way. So I'll get Steve Young to come up and lead singing. Because in the last 20 years I've led one song. It was pretty cool. For those that are here, I hit the note. So we keep our word and we honor the standards of the company. Go ahead.
Google says faithfulness to a person, cause, or belief demonstrated by continuing loyalty and support.
Loyalty. Dependability. And they weren't doing that. Again, if you're just a regular old slave, good luck with that. But as a Christian, we have to represent. Ephesians 2, 8 and 10. Ephesians 2, 8 and 10. For by grace you have been saved through faith, not by yourself. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. I love the contrast. In verse 9 it says not of works, but in verse 10 for good works. And it sounds like it's a contrast, but it's not. I've seen kids, I've seen adults do great things. We're out to eat and they're helping somebody. Hey, let me open the door for you. Something little like that, or I can bag that for you, or let me help you put it in your car. Just walking by. By the way, 80 pounds of concrete weighs a lot more than 80 pounds of concrete did 15 years ago. I was looking for that guy to help me, and he did. Different story. But I've seen people do so many things that are just helpful and Christ-like. But the sad thing is sometimes we don't tell people, we don't give the opportunity when they say, oh, thank you so much. And say, well, it's the least I could do, I'm a Christian. Because in verse 9, he says, don't do those good works so people can say, hey, great job. And I said, yeah, I'm a really good guy. Verse 10, not of works, lest anyone should boast. Or verse 9, and for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. We're created to do good works. So what are some good works? What have we done this week that would be considered a good work? He prepared for us to do good works. I got business cards for the first time in a long time. And I went and ate last night, and there was only 2 other tables in the restaurant. I went to Bobo's, Baba, Boo-Boo? Babos. Looked kind of weird, but Bill told me, he goes, you like spaghetti? I go, I love spaghetti. He said, spaghetti meatballs, it's this big. And I go, yeah, right. And guess what? For 9 something, it was this big. But I hate meatballs, so I said, can you sub that for bolognese, the meat sauce? I don't really like meatballs. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, we can't. I said, no worries. And she came back, she goes, I talked to the manager. I said, oh, great, now I gotta leave you a tip because you did something good. And she started laughing, and then I just started talking to her. I just moved out here. I live here, right next to the church. And she goes, what do you do? And I told her, and I go, I have 2 jobs. And anyway, this table was, we talked for about 15 minutes. And she was go high school, she wants to be a nurse, and what a great time. And at the end of it, I said, hey, so I've already said a prayer for you. And she goes, well, I don't really believe in religion. I said, that's okay. I do, so I said a prayer for you. If you didn't believe in it and you said a prayer for me, it might not be as effective. And she started laughing again. And then I said, if you ever need anything. And she goes, thank you so much. Now, when she ripped it up after I left and just wanted her tip, that's not on me. But I made sure she knew I was a Christian and who I belonged to. Now, I'm not saying that to do this. I'm letting you guys know that I did that to honor God. Because it's not about me. Any questions? I'm talking a lot. Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Because that's what we're here to do. Everybody has good works to do. Everybody here has talent. What's your talent? What works are you doing? Said in 2 different verses, he's already planned out works for us to do, so he's given us opportunity. Careful when you pray, God, put somebody in front of me. God, give me something to do. Because it's probably going to happen. So unless you don't want to do anything, or you don't want anybody in front of you that's not a Christian, then probably not a good prayer to pray. Okay, going back to Colossians, verse 23. And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord, not men. Anybody want to give me, without Googling it, what your definition of character is?
What your definition of what?
Character.
The attributes that define who you are.
That's a good one. Linda?
I saw, I mean, I've seen it many times, but a big picture and it said, character is who you are. See, I've forgotten now how it said, when nobody, it's who you are is when, is really
You
what
do
you
the
are.
same thing when nobody's looking.
Yeah.
That's the way my dad described it to me. And so he ingrained that, instilled that in me when I went out to my first job. He says, if your boss is looking, you better work harder than him. If he's not looking, you better work harder than him. That's not gonna happen, Dad. That's character, and that's what he's talking about. Whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord, not to men. I remember Claim Jumper, a VP, walked in. I'm sitting down eating my lunch, and there was 2 other managers, super slow. 2 other managers sitting down, and 1 manager standing up there, and turned around, and the vice president walked in. It looked like somebody turned on the lights, and the roaches took off. And he saw everybody running, and he walked over. He goes, "Hey, Bill, how you doing?" I go, "Great, living the dream, sir." And he goes, "Where did we go?" I go, "I think it was because of you. I'm not 100% sure." And he goes, "You didn't move." I go, "You know we're here 10 to 12 hours a day. You know we eat. I'm not hiding anything." And he started laughing. Because you don't have to pretend. Just be you, use your gifts, and go from there. So I said 5 verses. I only got to 3. Sorry. So time's up. So we need to do a song. And thank you very much. And if I get to do this next week, I'll finish up what Chris told me to do. Appreciate it.